Here we go.
Yeah, unless, you know, often.
Are we live, Chris?
Let me just check. Yes, we are.
All right, fantastic. Okay. All right, I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, November 30th, 2021. It is 1:04 p.m. and I apologize, the chair was having some technical difficulties. On today's agenda, let me just make sure I've got the correct one pulled up here. Adam and Bonnie, we have 5 items, starting with the fire apparatus discussion.
That's correct.
That's correct.
All right, excellent. Okay, then we have 5 items on today's agenda. Just to double check, do we have anybody who needs to get out of here sooner rather than later? I know Alice is here. I was thinking that I'd move item number 2 up into first place, just so that I'll just get through our discussions, unless somebody has an objection to that.
The only thing I have a 2 o'clock appointment I got to be attending.
Okay, and I apologize. Who's talking? Is this Scott?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, got it. I will make sure then that we get you out of here. Chief Kayleen, if it's okay with you, maybe we'll put you back to the end of the meeting. If you have other things to work on, you could go work on those for a minute, and we'll get you here in a sec.
That's no problem at all. We're here.
Sounds great. All right, then we're going to move forward first with item number 2, a resolution adopting the Williamsport Heart and Soul Peer Report and Action Plan. Mr. Memmi?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. We're bringing to you this afternoon the final report of the Community Heart and Soul Project. This project began in 2016 and has been an ongoing initiative involving the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership, the Pennsylvania Humanities Council, the Orton Family Foundation, the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and the city of Williamsport. This process was impacted by COVID-19 and has kind of slowed it down, but we're here today to present to you this resolution so that we can close it out in very short order. Alice Trowbridge is in attendance to present and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you. Alice, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Kim.
Hi, everybody. For those of you that I have not met or do not know well, Alice Trowbridge, work with the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership. And the partnership learned about Community Heart and Soul as a civic engagement model and wanted to apply it to the River Towns program. Williamsport was one of the first Community Heart and Soul towns in Pennsylvania, as Skip had mentioned, with the collaboration with those partners. I served as the peer consultant and project coordinator. Heart of Williamsport was volunteer driven, and I led the process which applied the Community Heart and Soul model for civic engagement. And what that means is meeting people where they are. Instead of asking them to come to a meeting and requiring them to come to you, we went out to the public and met them where they were. We were asking questions with the intent to learn what people love most about living in Williamsport. And we were listening to understand and to build relationships based on what people love about our city. So where we met people, what we asked and what we heard is summarized in the report that was shared with you. We learned about people's life experiences in Williamsport and extracted qualitative data to develop the heart and soul statements. The heart and soul statements represent what people love most about living in Williamsport, and the idea charts contain projects suggested by citizens to improve or enhance what they said they loved about living in the city. I should say, and working in the city as well. The next step following the gathering of this data was put together the report and to share the plan with people and organization entities whose work and mission aligns with them. Now, this includes civic organizations, but also some city departments, bureaus, and authorities. And these are listed in the charts at the end of the report with the tables. The Heart of Williamsport volunteer team needs to regroup post-COVID to share the plan. And we would greatly appreciate your support in opening doors where you may have connections to organizations that are listed as potential partners. So we could go make a presentation and just make them aware of what people shared with us. As the peer consultant, I recommend that council review the plan and the project ideas. It represents extensive public outreach, so you should reference this information when developing projects, writing grants, and making decisions about the city's future. If you have questions about anything that's in there or what we did or things as they're worded, you can reach out to me. And you can also reach out to Chelsea Blair in the City Community and Economic Development Department, because she was part of the Heart of Williamsport team as we developed the project ideas. She's a very knowledgeable resource for you right there in City Hall. So in addition to this summary report, there's the extensive files with all the raw data, the personal interviews, and those are both on interview and in transcript form. I sent Chelsea a link to this data, which she has and said will be saved to their department's network, so you can easily access it. There are links there that, like I said, will take you to every one of the videos that we have recorded, and you can listen to any one of them. There's also the hour-long movie from the Heart of Williamsport that can be viewed as well. I know there's some new members on council that weren't here as we were doing this work over the past year, so I'm just going to open it up to questions to see, if you've had a chance to review it. One thing I will apologize to those that got it in the digital format, the idea charts in the back. They're meant to be on 11 by 17. I'm having somebody help me merge 11 by 17 PDFs in so they're easier for you to read. But I'm happy to get anyone a paper copy that would like one.
Great, thanks, Alice. Let me yield the floor here to Bonnie and Adam first. If you have any thoughts or questions about this.
This is Bonnie speaking. Alice, I cannot believe, when you look back, first time I met you was when this first started and you were in my store and it was the first Friday and starting to do the interviews. And that goes back to 2016.
Yeah.
That's how far back. And it just, so many places that you went. I can remember, the Newberry Lions Club Fair that you would go there, and so many other places to interview people. And all the volunteers that were a part of this. And the information is just astounding. And some of the groups that we would meet in one of the churches with what was his name? Sweeting, I think, in his church.
Yeah,
and
Pastor Sweeting.
And it was just putting all that together and then finding out exactly where everybody wanted to go with this. The information is invaluable. It really is. And to realize that this is still going on, I think is a testament to your passion about this, because you have been the driver behind this. And I think, and if anybody hasn't read this or seen it, it's really a great program. It gives you the history of our city. I mean, when you stop and think and hear what everybody has contributed, it's fantastic. I have nothing else to add to this. That I think it's just it's a great program, and I'm so happy that it's still going forward.
Thanks, Bonnie, and agreed. Adam, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just agree with everything that Councilwoman Katz has said. Alice, I haven't been able to meet you. I appreciate you being here. I'm one of the new members. And I wasn't around whenever this effort started in the mid 2010s. I can tell you, I've seen a number of the videos that are up, and I think they're great. There's a lot of great information in those specifically. There's a lot of great information in the report you provided us. I echo those sentiments. It's great. This is going through this not as thoroughly as I'd like to, given given budget week. But the first thing that I thought of was, I mean, we, as the city specifically, we've been talking about through our ARPA work sessions, and even over the last year and a half, what does a comprehensive economic development strategy look like? This is an amazing tool to support those efforts, and something that we definitely need to and should incorporate into that broader effort, as we hopefully sooner than later get that off the ground and figure out what that is. So just thank you. I mean, great effort, love it, and I'm glad that you're still involved with it and leading the charge. So thank you very much.
May I add one thing that I should have pointed out, that important to council would be on pages 9 and 10, the recommendations for heart and soul stewardship. There's a few things. It's just asking you to provide copy of the statements in the report to administration, directors, council, and committees, and new members coming on board. And then just review them annually. It's one of those things where looking at these things just kind of reminds us what people said they valued, and maybe updating them every 2 years, or definitely if you're thinking of doing an update to your comprehensive plan. And just collaborating. I'd like to see collaboration. We never formalized a Rivertown team, Susquehanna Greenway Rivertown team. And that's something that, if that was formed in collaboration with the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership, could be a great mechanism for looking at the items, the project ideas under beautiful natural environment and urban amenities, because a lot of those fall, in alignment with mission of the Greenway. And then, just to maybe assign or create an entity, whether it's a committee, authority, or a citizen advisory group, to review the project ideas annually to see what aligns with or could be incorporated into projects that you're doing. It could be that you're doing a larger project and some of these ideas would fit within it. And again, just I think it could be helpful as guidance. That's all.
I also think what's really neat too about all this, especially when you look at the project list, which is that Appendix C that you all received. What's really interesting is that there's projects that the community can handle themselves, like more of the grassroots-based projects, but then there's also projects that the city can be involved with as well. And they range anywhere from fire department stuff to police department stuff to community and economic development, code, zoning. It's really interesting to see the dynamics of all these projects underneath all these categories.
Yeah, I would agree, Chelsea. There is a lot here and a lot of suggestions for us to move on. I think Alice is right. It literally touches every aspect of what we do as a city government, as well as aspects of kind of the way we live our lives. And so to make this something that we revisit every time we work on a major project in the city, or to Adam's point, look at economic development, I think is key. And Alice, that's the step that we're taking here, but it is, I've seen us do this before and forget to move forward with the document, in mind. And that's something that we need to start being very mindful of in the city, whether it's the Heart and Soul Project, whether it's Complete Streets. These are things that create a livable community and create the community that your citizens want to see. And now that we've done this research, we need to make certain that we follow it. Quick question for you, Alice, is this document, do we have plans to kind of continue to make this a living document? Is there a way that is there an organization that will kind of try to update this as the community changes? Or is that something that, or is that not something that's in place at this point? Is that something that the city needs to try and figure out? Talk a little bit about the continuation of it.
Yeah, at this point, what the Heart of Williamsport team, and remember this was a team of volunteers, we kind of fell apart through COVID. We made our first presentation of the action plan to the ERC in March of 2020, and then everything shut down. And I've lost, the cohesiveness of the volunteers. But I think if we were to come up with a plan of how to share this out with organizations, go make a presentation to organizations who align with it and bring it to their attention and ask them to consider, taking on things. I would love to see, some of these projects would be great to have done through like leadership, like homing. There's simple projects in here that, graduating classes could take on as their project. But beyond that, I don't know, the team is kind of burned out with all that happened. But we would certainly be here at least as an advisory capacity and to share out the plan to groups. If the city wanted to put, I don't know if it would be an advisory group or whatever together, we would certainly support that and work with you. I don't know that we'd be taking the lead, but I think with the Susquehanna Greenway partnership, there's an opportunity there to create a Rivertown team that could look, like I said, at least at two of the entities. It very much aligns with beautiful natural environment and urban amenities. And that might be the way to start in terms of an entity outside of, city government itself.
And Liz, to kind of address what you were just asking too, as part of one of the recommendations, it was for ERC to look at this document or at least look at the project list every year. So in turn, in some ways, it does keep it as a live document and an ever-changing document, because you are going to be reviewing projects that have been completed, and maybe there are projects that the community has reached out to you about and in saying maybe something else needs to be done that would fit in one of these categories. So it is one of those projects or one of these documents that I do see as a live document from here on out.
Okay. Yeah, I think I think that we can help to keep it alive, but I guess what I'm saying is that at some point, in much the same way that we do a new comprehensive plan periodically, both as a city, as a county, as a multi-municipal area, we have some obligation to the information. I think the research sort of needs to be done again at a certain point. And that is to say, the population changes, you work in certain areas, and perhaps the perception of the population of what is necessary or good for the community changes. And that, I don't know that sort of updating will happen through ERC per se. But all of that said, I think that this is very much, these are recommendations that are still very vital to Williamsport, and that we have several years where we can work to implement these, that consider them, kind of the most realistic snapshot of the needs of our community according to its citizens. And then I think that at some point we should begin to look at how we can revitalize the document, so to speak, to provide ourselves with more guidance moving forward. But it's really exciting, and it's especially, I think, exciting when you do a peer outreach project like this, and you discover that so much of the community values the things that you value, and that to me is particularly exciting, and just some of the really surprising ideas that came out of this were really great to see. So Alice, thank you for all your hard work on this. Thanks to the entire Heart and Soul group for all of their hard work on this. The city will definitely take this and run with it as much as we can. Any further comments?
No.
Okay. Hearing nothing, I would take a motion, please.
I make a motion, we pass this on to the full body of council with positive recommendation.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, excellent. Alice, thanks so much for coming. Chelsea and Skip, obviously, thank you as well. And thanks. We'll move on to item number 3 on our agenda, a resolution awarding the installation of a PVC membrane swimming pool lining system at the Memorial Pool.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. This resolution awarding the installation of PVC membrane swimming pool lining system at Memorial Park Pool. The cost of this is not to exceed $129,105. The PVC membrane liner, it comes with a 10-year warranty. All the other products, fasteners, caulk fittings, etc., is 1-year warranty. It does have a 10-year weld warranty. I know the last liner lasted for at least 20 years. So
Wait, let me be clear. I don't believe we've ever had a liner, have we?
Yes,
Like-
prior to the pool renovation, there was a pool liner.
Okay, all right. So this is before we fixed it a couple of years ago. All right, got it. Sounds good. Sorry, Mr. Livermore. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt. I wasn't
No,
aware of
that's
that.
okay. Yeah, there's some past history that I'm not aware of, so I'm just
Yeah.
going off of what I got here. So, we are gonna talk to the contractor to get our best option. Obviously, they couldn't be here when they were looking at it. They just looked at pictures. So there will be, they will do a pressure test to check all the lines to make sure everything's good there. And by going with this one route, we will save, I would say $10,000 cost, but that's like very low. If we'd end up going to another route with paint, concrete, and keeping that up to date. So this liner is going to save us a lot by putting this in.
Okay, sounds good. But also, so you're saying you think we're going to save like $10,000 annually?
Yes,
On
by putting the liner in, so there was an option where if we didn't go all the way up to the top of the gutter system, that would have to be maintenance. And by running this all the way up and covering the concrete, there's no maintenance involved at all.
Mhm. And a 10-year warranty on that element of the liner, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Sorry, I'm stepping out of turn here. Bonnie and Adam, what questions do you have?
The question I have was, did a solicitor look over this contract, Scott?
Yes. Austin White.
Okay, thank you.
Adam?
Yeah, just remind me, I think we hit this last night during the budget review, but this is coming out of the 2022 budget. I can't remember if it's capital projects or somewhere else, but is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't remember if it was, and I know we allocated a lot of money to fix the pool in general. I just wanted to clarify it was coming out of 2022 versus what we allotted this year to get it up and running. So, well, a lot of my other questions were answered. I was going to just verify it was RFP. You included that in there. They were the lowest responsive bidder. I appreciate that. Looks like you piggybacked off of John to use Penn bid. That's great. Keep that going. So I don't really have any other questions. Thanks, Scott.
Sounds good, Adam. Now, so wait, help me to understand. I thought that we had discussed utilizing the American Rescue Plan Act funds for this project. Is that no longer a proposal?
No, there was still money left over from the original donations for the renovations of the pool. I believe that was around 114,000. Mayor, am I correct?
Yeah, I think it's around 110, 112-ish thousand, what we have left in that account from the donations.
It's 112 this year if we put 2,000 into it.
Yeah, so,
And then the remaining 17.
and that'll have to, once the contractor comes out and determines which option is best for us, we do have, there's a financial software account now that we're doing the stamp program, and that's 70/30 that we could transfer. I was talking to Joe Poplock earlier about that. If we need to go up to the 129, the not to exceed amount.
Okay. Is there a reason why we decided to use the pool fund rather than the American Rescue Plan funds?
No, not necessarily. I'm open to either. The pool fund was there for the initial renovation, so we figured, that was what it was for initially, but I mean, I'm open to the finance committees. I mean, if we rescue plan, we have 110 in the donations for repairs and renovations, so we just figured that's what it was for originally, but if we want to look at rescue plan, I'm open to the finance committees, any recommendation. But we do have 110 in that account, so we figured it's there, so that's what it was for.
I mean, I guess my only thought is that is money that we can use for anything related to the pool also in the future, correct? Whereas
I'm assuming that might be a Joe Pavlak question. I wasn't around for the initial donation.
Yeah, no, I mean, and we've been contributing $2,000. I think we had 100,000 in there, and we've been contributing $2,000 a year, which is a paltry sum to the concept of pool maintenance ever since. So, hence the 112. But I guess the reason that I'm asking is it would seem likely that we will have other funding needs at the pool sooner rather than later. It would seem to me like perhaps we should be looking to a funding strategy for the liner that leaves us with some bounce funding in case we have immediate, repair needs at the pool. How do the other members of the finance committee feel?
I mean, personally, I'm okay with the approach that the administration's proposed. I mean, we've gone back and forth on, should we, shouldn't we? I mean, we had the debate about the police radios. I mean, we've talked about trying not to allocate much more, spend much more about it without an agreed upon plan.
Right.
You can make the argument that we'd have to replace this without that money anyway. And so why not use the resources we already have allocated towards it? Needs to get done. I mean,
right.
I think we just push through. Personally, let's get it done. Let's make sure that it's in position to be open for next summer. And let's leave it at that. That's just my opinion.
Okay. I guess my only question is, what do we do then if we have other funding needs for the pool, say next year or a couple of years from now, and we've eliminated the funding that we have set back for it?
Liz, I agree with you, because every time we turn around, there's always something that needs to be done with the pool. And if we deplete that fund completely, that leaves us nothing. And looking at our budget, there's nowhere else to go in this budget to go to repair anything that might come up. There's no rainy day fund once we deplete it. If we could take some of the ARPA money for the pool, because we also want to take ARPA money and we also want to see if we can make money on ARPA, and see where we can go with that. But I would hate to deplete this completely. I really would, because it scares me. It scares me, even though there's a guarantee with this liner and supposedly all the leaks are fixed and everything else. We don't know what else is going to come up that might come up. Because Liz, you and I know there's always been a problem.
There's always an issue at the pool, always.
If I can just jump in real quick. The only suggestion I would make is we ask Mr. Pavlak to see if he can find the documents from when the money was donated to be sure of how it defines the money is supposed to be used. Because I know like Brandon Park, the money is defined that, it must be used at the front entrance of Brandon Park for beautification of the park. Other grants have been defined as, it must be used to do this or do that. So just to make sure that we know moving forward exactly what the money can be used for, I think would be a huge benefit to us all.
Adam, I don't think that's the problem. The problem is we just don't want to deplete the account.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying so we don't think that, if something breaks, that we could just use that money for that. It may define that it has to be for renovation of the pool more than, repairs to the pool.
Mr. Livermore, would you be able to find that out by Thursday? And sorry, Peg.
I believe it was issued with the understanding it was for maintenance.
Okay.
of the pool.
That was kind of my thought, was that we got a certain amount of money for maintenance and a certain amount of money for upfront work. I think that the liner easily counts as either, right? Either getting something new for the pool or as maintenance, I suppose. But
Can I interject and add one item that probably won't apply, but I just want to make sure everyone knows it. This is John, by the way. I actually put the project out on PennBid. We did not have wage rates in with the project listing on PennBid. We did not have to because it appears as though we weren't going to use state funds. If any of these are state funds, then we need to have wage rates. I just wanted to point that out. I don't think they are. It sounds like they're all either local or ARPA, which is fine. I just wanted to point that out to everyone.
got it. Okay.
Thank you.
So right now we're not dealing with prevailing wage on here. Okay. I mean, and talk to me a little bit, either Adam Winder or Scott Livermore, about the timeline on this. It sounds as though, Adam, you're saying they haven't yet had a look to see exactly what system we need. Like, I'm assuming they can't install this until spring, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And so what kind of order deadline are we under in terms of getting it ordered so that it can be installed in spring?
John can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we move on it, they basically will have the liner ready to go in once spring hits, so the pool could open for the Memorial Day holiday.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking is, if we say that we think that we should use all or a portion, we should fund all or a portion of this through the American Rescue Plan funds, we had agreed not to touch those until we had like a working document that authorized, or at least our first round of expenditures, which we haven't finalized yet. Although I think we're hoping to by either this Thursday or next Thursday, was my understanding. So the only reason I'm asking is if we were to decide to fund it through American Rescue Plan funds, then we might have to delay on authorizing it for a couple of weeks or something. Is that going to slow it down so much that it won't be able to go in, or is it not?
I don't think it's going to slow it either way. I mean, okay. I think it was the question of, what funding we're going to use isn't a big deal because we wouldn't pay for it until the liner was completely installed. Okay. So we wouldn't pay for it till the spring.
Okay, got it. All right, then yeah, because I mean, I think we're all comfortable with the idea of getting a membrane. I maybe would like to understand what other people on council think. There's some concern. I have some concern about, spending American Rescue Plan funds. We might have another use for those, but I also have some concern about spending funds specifically allocated for the pool when, in my experience with it, we always seem to need more money for the pool. And I'm just worried that when another need crops up in a couple of years, we won't have American Rescue Plan funding to utilize for it. Whereas right now we do. So we can kind of discuss that amongst ourselves and I think arrive at a conclusion about that on Thursday. But that's that is my only question about it is just what we think is the wisest place to take the money from. Bonnie and Adam, do you have further questions?
No, I don't.
No, I don't either.
Then are we willing to forward this to the full body of council?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the two of you have a different opinion. I mean, I'm comfortable forwarding it with a positive recommendation with what we have in front of us. But if you two feel different, we can do it differently.
I think we can send it with a positive recommendation, and the part of the review on Thursday will simply have to be discussing with the full body of council what our thoughts are on the funding. I know when we, the last American Rescue Plan Act funding discussion we had about a week ago, the pool liner was in that packet. And so my assumption was that was where we were taking the funding from. But it seems as though the plan then has changed midstream, sort of. So I think we just need to discuss that in front of the full body of council. And I suppose if necessary, we could table this until January or something until we get that resolved. But I think we can forward it with a positive recommendation.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Sounds good. All right. And then just to
To
move on
disposal of
to.
the dump trucks.
Mhm. This is the strangest thing that we do to me. Item number 4, resolution authorizing the disposal of 2000 GMC 8500 dump trucks from Public Works. Mr. Livermore.
Yeah, so we have 2 GMC 2000 8500 dump trucks in the Public Work Department that are no longer usable. So we can start with truck 12. And so that's a 2000 8500 dump truck. The mileage on that is 98,763. This truck is, we can't even get it to pass inspection anymore. The truck needs tires, front brakes, the slack adjusters, the air brakes are shot. It's an ongoing problem that it's just not even worth to put the money into. Live their life here, I guess, per se. Parts are very hard to find too, and they're expensive if you do get them. So it's that's an issue with that truck. We have another truck, this is 11, which is the same, pretty much same thing. This had 107,000 miles on it. Can't pass inspection. The frame is rusted out and split apart. Cab is rusted beyond repair. The dump box lift system needs replaced. Air brakes again. We are putting these on as public surplus, opening bid at 500.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. Questions, guys?
All I could say is you look at the stats and it's go, who's going to really want these? I mean, if we get $500, I think that's going to be great for each one of them. I mean, I think that's going to be good.
Well, anything we get, obviously the revenue will be deposited back in the liquid fuels account.
Okay.
I make a
And that's required, correct, Scott?
Yes.
Okay. Adam?
No questions for me. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, the only question I would have is, I think the same discussion we've had multiple times. Why are we selling these items through River Valley Transit? And is that likely to cause any issues?
No, I don't. No, there's no issues with that.
No, it just lists River Valley Transit. It's actually City of Williamsport. River Valley Transit holds the same EIN as the City of Williamsport. The money automatically gets deposited into the City of Williamsport's account, not River Valley's. It's a cleaner process than what it sounds on paper. It's just we can't create another account because the EIN number is already being used.
Okay, got it. I mean, I know this sounds stupid, but could we work to change the names on the existing account such that it said City of Williamsport?
Yes, that's how it should have been from the very beginning. But for whatever reason, I'm not really sure. I don't want to speculate. Yes, Brett Kelly is working on trying to change it to the City of Williamsport.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly how extensive the process is.
Okay. I mean, yes, Bonnie?
Adam, thank you, Liz. Do all the rest of our vehicles say for codes? Are the EIN numbers under the City of Williamsport?
The EIN?
Yes, the EIN number.
Yeah. Everything is
Because if they're using the EIN number, why weren't these from Public Works under that number?
The entire city, every department within the city falls under that EIN.
Okay, so it doesn't take, it isn't that difficult. It shouldn't, well, I'm talking business wise, so I don't know. But to set up another account for a different EIN number, it's just for tax purposes.
We don't have a different one. Like if we separated River Valley Transit to an authority, they would have their own EIN.
Right,
right. Where right now, every department in the city falls under the same tax number, same EIN, same everything. If any department within the city applies for credit somewhere, your building center, a parts store, whatever, it's all the same. It's all City of Williamsport. Just for whatever reason, under the prior administration, this public surplus was set up under the DBA of River Valley Transit. Not exactly sure why. Just
Are any of the River Valley vehicles under that number?
every city.
Every single, what you're saying is, so everything city and RVT is under one number.
Correct, because RVT is an arm of the city.
I think it makes sense that anything RVT would be under the city's number, right? Because it is a department of the city. It is no different than the Department of Public Works. It is no different than the Department of Finance.
Right.
The only difference is that it gets specific funding sources that other departments can't get from the federal government and the state government. I think the confusing part of this is the fact that River Valley Transit is listed on there poses the question. I think it really comes down to clarification of why is that listed there? Is it a administrative need because of the intricacies of River Valley Transit, or is it just simply something that needs to be corrected? That's what it seems like to me.
Simply something needs to be corrected.
Yeah. So I mean, let's just get it corrected and move on. Good. I mean, good
I
question.
think that was, that was the thrust of my point, right? Where something can be listed as either River Valley Transit or the city of Williamsport, I would rather see it be the larger umbrella covering us rather than the smaller one.
It should
especially as we try to segregate those two entities, or as we begin to try to segregate those two entities, things like this, I would rather see coming into an account considered the city of Williamsport, just from a paper trail perspective. I think that'd be wiser. So thanks for looking into it, Adam. Okay. But with the exception of that question, I don't think there's anything else too exciting about this item. If there are no further points to be made by the Finance Committee or anyone else, I would take a motion.
Make a motion. We forward to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Mr. Livermore and potentially Mr. Winder, we will see you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And now we're going to move on to item number 1 on the agenda, fire apparatus purchase discussion. Chief Killian, you still out there?
We're still here.
Fantastic. Thank you for being patient. I apologize for moving you around there.
No problem at all. So I do have a couple folks with me. I want to introduce them before I share my screen and jump into our presentation here. Lieutenant Mike Bastion and Joel Scherner here. They've been instrumental with our apparatus, Joel specifically with our apparatus maintenance, and Mike specifically with our speccing and working through our process for purchasing new equipment, new fire apparatus. So I wanted them to get a little peek behind the curtain here and see how this works, and also help me out on any details that I may miss through our presentation. So I'm going to share my screen here and jump into that. If you can give me 1 second. Okay. Can everybody see that?
It's still looking on my side, Mark, but
Yeah, it still says you started screen. There we go.
You go.
Got it? Okay. All right. So we're going to talk specifically about 3 things here today. Our current apparatus, the needs that we have for replacement, and then how our proposals for funding that replacement. If you do remember back in January, I brought this to Finance Committee. We discussed it then, the need, and basically got the green light from you guys to move forward on starting to build the specs and with the intention of bringing kind of a final package to you here. Well, that process has taken really all of about 14-15 months, and we are now in crunch time. There's been some significant price increases over the year on fire apparatus, and there's another significant price increase coming here on January 1. Along with that, the process of speccing equipment, and then once we actually make an order and delivering equipment, it takes a considerable amount of time. So, there's been a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes with this, but the goal here, like I said today, is to give you an overview of where we are currently, what our current needs are, and then how we intend to pay for it here, because, you know, with the 16 to 18 month time frame on getting apparatus ordered and then delivered, we're really against the, you know, up against a pretty hard deadline here with our current maintenance needs. So I'm just going to go through this. You know, obviously capital expenditures for us from a city standpoint, you know, fire apparatus is a huge capital expense. We understand that, you know, aside from our personnel costs, the cost of our fire trucks are about the biggest expense that we have, you know, besides firehouses, you know, besides buildings. Our buildings can last us 40, 50, 60 plus years. You know, our fire trucks last us a considerably less amount of time than that. So, you know, we understand that this is a big financial undertaking. So, you know, we've tried to give it the thought that it needs from a just financial perspective for the city long term. Okay, so our goals as a department are to really maintain a modern, safe and reliable fleet of apparatus. And when I say fleet of apparatus, I mean from our ladder truck to our engines all the way down through our utility vehicles. And it's been something that has been unfortunately neglected over time, specifically our utility vehicles, but you know, that's for a different time. And we want to meet the not only the current but the future needs of the department. We are in the accreditation process. We had an ISO review last year, and with the accreditation and our ISO process, we've identified some needs to help reduce our ISO level and provide, you know, everybody in the city with the most cost-effective method for providing service that we can. And really, we're trying to look at data and use realistic data-driven apparatus replacement plan while taking into account the city's financial outlook. And operationally, a huge component of what we're doing here is trying to align our current and future operational needs to our apparatus specifications and capabilities. So we're trying to take what we're doing today from a fire department standpoint, what we anticipate doing in the future, and then align them with the fire apparatus that we're specifying. So we make sure we have longevity associated with that, you know, with those apparatus. All right, so I'm going to go through these relatively quickly. These are the city-owned pieces of fire apparatus. And just as a reminder to everybody, engine 14-1, the green engine that is up in Ole Cumming Township, is purchased and maintained by Ole Cumming, you know, Township Volunteer Fire Department as part of the alliance agreement. So the apparatus that I'm going to go through here pretty briefly is our city-owned vehicles. So engine 1 is a 2016 engine. You know, our engines traditionally have been spec'd to last about 6 to 8 years in frontline service. This vehicle is 5 years old, a little over 5 years old at the time, and frankly has been in a significant maintenance issue since we took delivery. It's the busiest piece of apparatus we have in our fleet. And in 2021, it's been out of service about 25% of the time with some pretty significant maintenance issues. It currently has 15 outstanding maintenance write-ups. You know, our maintenance budget already for 2021 is about 15% over budget, with still, you know, with a month left in the year. Tower 1 is a 2011 Pierce 100-foot aerial. Was purchased brand new in 2011. We don't have major maintenance issues with Tower 1, but it is showing its age. Again, we expect about 12 years out of our aerials has been what we have when we've replaced them over the last 20 to 30 years, about every 10 to 12 years, because those maintenance expenses start to creep up on us. We have had some issues over the last couple of years with the aerial device itself, boom extension or retraction. We are getting cracking in the body areas of the truck, which are non-repairable according to the vendor. And the tower has 15 outstanding maintenance write-ups currently. All right, so let me back up. Engine 1 and Tower 1 are in frontline service. So Engine 1 and Tower 1 are the two vehicles that we run every day out of fire headquarters. The next two that I'm going to show you here, Engine 2-1 and Engine 3-1, they're reserve apparatus. So they're apparatus that are at fire headquarters for use off duty and use when a vehicle breaks down. We rotate them into frontline service. So these two vehicles have been getting a lot of frontline service use here over the last couple of years. Engine 2-1 is a 2000 Pierce engine. Engine 2.1 and the twin of it were purchased at the same time back in 1999. So these two engines, this engine and one that looked identical to it, were bought together. It's a 1,500 gallon a minute pump, 500 gallon water tank, pretty standard engine, really a light duty engine when it was purchased. And it is now 21 years old and is at the end of its useful life. We're getting rusting in the frame rails, pump issues. Again, it's been a great engine for us over its life, but it's just to the point now where it's not worth any money. It's at the end of its useful life, and our concern is with the engine in frontline service that we have now continuously breaking. The more we run this, it's only a matter of time before we have a serious breakdown, and it's probably not going to be able to be repaired. 14 outstanding maintenance write-ups with engine 2.1. Engine 3.1 is a 1998 E1. This engine was purchased in 2016 to replace the twin of the previous engine that I showed you. That engine was totaled with a pump issue when it went out for service. We got an insurance check for that. That money was kind of burning a hole in our pocket. We needed to purchase an engine pretty quickly, and we got this thing. Drivetrain wise, it's in pretty good shape, but operationally it does not fit our needs. It's got a 1,000 gallon water tank. Hose lines are very high. This was designed more as a rural type engine, and it gives us considerable operational issues trying to use it in an urban environment. It's bigger, it's heavier. Again, not really ergonomically set up for our use. We've put a boatload of money into this vehicle since we've had it. The transmission's been replaced. There's fire pump issues, and there's 17 outstanding maintenance write-ups with this. So that's our current fleet. Those are the 4 pieces of fire apparatus that are owned by the Bureau of Fire right now. Right. So our fleet cost comparison, and what I would want to show you here is specifically the blue apparatus costs. I can send you some more detailed breakdowns of what these were, but for the sake of brevity, I wanted to just give a generic fleet cost comparison. In 2021, you see our maintenance costs are the highest they've been since 2015, and in 2015 is when we had the damage to that engine that took it out of service, and we replaced that with the new engine that was purchased. So our fleet costs are increasing substantially, and you'll see in next year's budget again another about 15% increase in what we budgeted for maintenance costs. So our current needs are based on the age of our current fleet, maintenance expenses, value of those vehicles, and the historic data that we've looked at over the last 25 to 30 years of Bureau of Fire operations. So what we have spec'd and we're awaiting pricing on from multiple vendors, and what our intention, to bring to council is the purchase of 2 engines and 1 tower. And what we're trying to do different with this purchase is really look at apparatus that we have a reasonable assurance are going to last us 20 years down the road. We don't want to come back to council in 5, 6, 7 years looking to replace, another engine. So our goal is really to look long-term and spec apparatus that are designed to operationally fit our needs, and then, be I'll say strong enough, be built well enough that will last us for a fair amount of time down the road with the use that it's got, use that it receives in a city like ours. So costs on these are approximate values. Again, we're still getting quotes. We should have that wrapped up here in the next couple of weeks. We're looking at about $700,000 per engine and $1.6 million for a ladder truck. So it's a $3 million investment. Right. Our apparatus replacement plan. I showed you this during the ARPA discussion the other night. We sat down and we looked at 25 years worth of Bureau of Fire maintenance costs and trends, life expectancy of similar sized of fire apparatus in similar sized municipalities, and the beginning phases of our community risk assessment and our strategic plan. And specifically where that goes into the community risk assessment and our strategic planning dives into what our operational needs are. How do we need to set these vehicles up as far as tools and equipment go to meet our operational needs, and again, give us the longevity that we want out of these vehicles. So what you're seeing here is a 30-year apparatus replacement plan. You see in the blue, the areas in the blue are all vehicles that we currently own. Green would be new purchases, and then yellow would be, an additional purchase, 20 years down the road. So in 2023, you'll see for engine 1, engine 2.1, engine 3.1, and tower 1, you'll see a new engine for engine 1 and engine 2.1, a used quint, which I will get into in the next slide, explain what that is and what our reasoning behind that is, and then a new tower, with the goal that those 4 vehicles will take us 15 to 20 years down the road without a whole lot of difficulty before we get into the next replacement cycle. All the vehicles underneath that are our utility vehicles and our command vehicles that are much smaller expenses that we can generally budget for from year to year. Okay. So the used quint that we would intend on purchasing. So when we replace both the engines in the tower, we will be selling the current equipment through a vendor, a third-party apparatus vendor that deals with apparatus sales, and the income generated from that sale would be used to purchase what we refer to in the fire service as a quint. And what a quint is basically a vehicle that could be used as an engine or a ladder truck together. They're single axle, 75-foot aerial ladder, 500 gallons of water. And our goal with this is it gives us a tremendous amount of operational flexibility from a reserve standpoint. Right now, when our tower goes out of service, when our ladder truck goes out of service, we don't have one to use. We're relying on outside municipalities to provide assistance, either by giving us one of their vehicles to loan, or we just go without a ladder, without a ladder truck, which is a significant risk citywide with the type of building stock that we have. So again, some of the advantages of this purchase too is we get ISO credit for a reserve ladder. Again, is our trek to go from an ISO 3 to an ISO 2, which saves taxpayers on insurance premiums. So that is our goal with this, with the overall replacement plan. So to go back a slide and reiterate that, our plan, we have four pieces of apparatus now. Our intention is to maintain 4 pieces of apparatus, 2 new engines, 1 new tower, and then the used quint. All right, so the next big question, so those are the needs. The next big questions are how we pay for it, right? What we have looked at and examined and really identified as the best possible scenario is a municipal leasing program. What a municipal leasing program is it's essentially a loan. So the term lease really doesn't apply. It's a financing program through third-party municipal leasing agencies or through the apparatus manufacturers themselves, depending on the manufacturer that we go with. The finance cost, the lease itself is not classified as debt against any of our municipal borrowing limits, tax exempt interest. We can obviously purchase at today's cost with low interest rates. And this line items are apparatus investment, making it easier to maintain that fleet replacement plan. So it's easy to put something on paper, but it's really hard to maintain that over 20 or 30 years. By using the financing option, we can line item that payment year by year and make it a little more realistic for us to maintain that fleet replacement plan in a variety of economic environments. So what pays the lease payments? Typically, our fire apparatus are purchased with Act 13 and Community Development Block Grant funds. What we have found over the years, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, with the inflation costs, the yearly price increases on apparatus going up at 5 to 8%. Act 13 and CDBG, we can't take the big chunks of money out of it that we were able to before, when a fire engine costs $400,000 or $500,000. So what the goal is here is this municipal lease would still be able to be funded, the yearly payment, by Act 13 and Community Development Block Grant funding in a much smaller amount on a yearly basis. We'll get into the actual dollars here in a minute. So any smaller yearly amount that Act 13 and CDBG money doesn't cover could be funded through basic general fund items. All right. So a lot of numbers on this slide, but this is really what tells the story. this is our financing plan and comparisons. And you're going to see three options up here. And option 1, 2, and 3, all of these options are for the purchase of 2 engines and the tower at a $3 million price tag. And again, that's an approximation. We're still waiting on final numbers to come back from vendors, but we're pretty confident we're going to be right about that number. So option 1 is 100% financed. If we were to go to a leasing company and finance that $3 million in whole over a 15-year period, this is what we would be looking at, about $256,000 per year. And as you go down the left side, you'll see 2023, and it goes, all the way to 2051. This is basically the dollars that are associated with that apparatus replacement plan that I showed a few slides back. So in 2041, you'll see another expense there for an engine. 2043 for the refurbishment of an aerial device and our ladder truck. And in 2049, another engine. These dollar figures under the cash purchase column are assuming 3% inflation, which is a pretty low number compared to what the manufacturers have actually seen over the last several years. All right, so option 1 is 100% financed. Option 2 is using ARPA funding to finance one engine, or to cover the cost of one engine, $700,000, and to finance $2.3 million. Those finance costs are $196,000 per year, over 15 years. Right, and option 3 is just using $1 million of ARPA funding towards the overall purchase, so a $2 million financing amount, and that shows $170,520. Per year for 15 years. The numbers at the bottom are all the same because, we're taking any ARPA consideration out of that, obviously 20 years down the road, looking at those numbers. So next slide here. So those funding examples, all right, option 1, 100% finance, $3 million financed over 15 years, about $255,800 yearly. There's $836,000 in interest over the term of that loan. So, we're paying that interest over the term of that 15-year loan. All right, option 2, $700,000 of ARPA funding used towards that. We're financing $2.3 million, about $196,000 yearly, and $640,000 in interest over the term of the loan. But the big part that I want to drive home with this is by using $700,000 of ARPA towards the purchase of that towards that purchase, we're saving $895,000 over 15 years. Option 3, $1 million of ARPA funding, financing $2 million, about $170,500 yearly, and that's $557,000 in interest over the term of the loan. And by spending that $1 million up front in cash, we are saving about $1.279 million over, that says 12 years, I'm sorry, it should be over 15 years. All right, advantages of our proposed replacement plan. We're creating a 20 to 30 year plan that outlines replacement of all of our vehicles. I know one of the priorities of council, and one of our priorities too, is planning. We're digging deep into our strategic planning process, and we want to look at our apparatus replacement as a long-term plan, not just as what do we need to do every 5 to 7 years, to stay afloat here. The 2 engine purchase will allow us to rotate those engines in frontline service, significantly reducing wear and tear and extending service life. Like I had mentioned previously, in 1999, we did the same thing. We purchased 2 engines and we rotated those 2 engines in and out of frontline service for 17 years. And it worked relatively well. And that's what it shows in the bullet point. We created a 16-year rotation with that, and what broke that 16-year rotation was an engine being damaged by a vendor when it went out for maintenance. Right. We're looking at purchasing a ladder truck, a tower truck that's designed for longevity and the ability to be refurbished. Right. Refurbishment on these vehicles could save us about 30% versus the cost of new. So if we were to have a tower ladder that could be refurbished, we'd be again at a 30% cost savings. And there's many types of, some of the specific types of aerials we're looking at have been in service 40 to 50 years with numerous refurbishments. One vendor for parts and maintenance. Our current apparatus fleet, we have 4 different pieces of apparatus that are built by 3 different manufacturers. So from a maintenance consistency standpoint, that's made things a little challenging. Again, identical vehicles for operational maintenance consistencies, increases in warranty length. And when you purchase a larger bulk purchase, what we have seen from our vendors is there's a little more flexibility from a maintenance standpoint. And the big one is we're seeing a 5 to 8% annual price increase. And with our current increases over the last year are closer to 15%. Right? The big part of this too is beginning of January, we're looking between a 6 and 12% price increase from every vendor we're dealing with. So we're trying to move this plan along as quickly as possible. Right. So brought these up in the ARPA meeting the other day. ARPA allowable use, this is information from Mr. Keller from Keller and Partners. When he was asked specifically if ARPA was allowable for Apparatus, and he did reply in the affirmative, right? And then why use some of this ARPA funding? We've discussed before, long-term savings. Overall, we're spending $1 million today to save $1.3 million over the course of the future. Ms. Katz brought up using ARPA funding from an investment standpoint, and in my opinion, that's exactly what we would be doing here. We're spending some money up front to save us in financing long term. Allows that community development block grant and Act 13 money to be reprioritized. I'm not going to skip and asking for $500,000 of CDBG money for the year. We're looking for a much smaller amount over long term. So again, we can line item that expense. And the big thing here too, which I know there was some surprise with when we discussed this the other night, but we're looking at COD, cash on delivery payments. So we won't need to spend a penny of this money until 2023 when these fire apparatus are delivered. So we have plenty of time to make sure, for that money to maybe sit in the bank and draw some interest before it's used, and to get, from a financing standpoint, everything in a row and ready to be, ready to go. That is all I have. And these guys get ready to go on a call, see if they have anything to add. So that is all I've got. Do you guys have anything to add? No? Okay, they're leaving on a call. I apologize for that, but
be safe, you guys.
I will answer any questions that I possibly can here that you may have. Okay.
So, Liz, sorry if you have one. Sorry, I'll jump in here.
No, sorry. Please, Adam, jump in. I was just kind of waiting until until everybody was out. But what can go for it?
Yeah, no worries. So the whole this is a good example. So when you look at the funding example slide, Chief Killian, I forget what number it is. I took a picture of it. The argument you're making is by using some of this money over 15 years, the city will save an X amount of dollars, which is great. These are the types of things that I think we need to see more of. I think with everything, specifically ARPA, I think this is great. In my mind, whether this is right or wrong, with anything, the question that I have to answer, or that I'm looking to answer, is, so let's look at option 3. If we would use $1 million of ARPA funding, we're going to save $1.279 million over 15 years. If we decided to put that $1 million somewhere else, would we get a better return on that in another area that we have a critical need? Maybe it's the redevelopment authority, maybe it's the land bank. That's the question, right? I think that would answer this for me. We've got it quantified from a savings perspective. I mean, this is really an investment in our fire department. Is there a better, return's a terrible word to say, because I mean, especially when you're talking public safety, but I mean, that's when you're talking the financing aspect of this, that's really what it comes down to. Because if we can compound that in a different area, we would have money to pay that off sooner and save money, but then also be able to faster, fund your replacement plan faster and put that in other areas of the city that also need it. I know the police department is in need of more cars. We've had debate about investments in our parks. That all needs to be sustained as well. So I think that's the question in my mind that I think we need to answer. This is very clearly, and I think very well defined, of what the savings here are. Is there somewhere else that it would compound faster to where we could put that back into other departments? That's the big question, I think, in my mind. Does that make sense, Chief?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a very valid point. And, those, unfortunately, I can only answer this question.
Yeah, I understand. I completely understand. And I'm not asking you to answer that question.
Mhm.
I think that you have answered the question of what that looks like for your department. And I think you've done that very, very well. I think that's on, I don't know if it's us individually as council members, if it's in conjunction with the administration and the finance department. I think those are the questions that we need to quantify and quantify fast, especially when it comes to this, because this all changes come January 1, right?
It does. And, our goal, we started this process in September of last year. I brought it to Finance Committee in January. The apparatus manufacturers are having a huge year from just a workload standpoint. So as we've been working through this process, our goal was simply, hey, we have this need, we have to replace fire apparatus, and just to provide as much information as possible as we could to you folks on what the options are from a funding standpoint.
Yeah. So Liz, that was the only comment I wanted to make. Like I said, I think this is extremely helpful for me. This quantifies what I think that analysis looks like for this proposal. That's the overarching question in my mind.
I agree, Adam. Do you have a mechanism by which you think we can quickly sort that out, though? Because that to me is the
I know, and I'm thinking through that as I am saying that.
Can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
I just want to reiterate too that we wouldn't need this money for 16 months. So it gives us more time. We can go into this with the plan to finance 100% of the cost, while we're still researching. And, if again, 16 months from now we go, or 6 months from now we go, yeah, we can set aside that $1 million for fire apparatus. I think that gives you guys as council a lot more flexibility to not have to rush something through.
Yeah. And Chief, that's another excellent point as well. I mean, we've talked about that with other projects, I think part of, and I don't want to speak for Liz or Bonnie, but I think part of what, at least my thought and understanding is with a plan is earmarking this money, even if it's going to be used in 3 years, we want to make sure that it's there.
Sure.
And when we can accrue interest at that point and even generate more out of it to use in other areas. So, Liz, to answer your question, to be honest, the thing that comes to mind for me in looking at these different determinations of what's the biggest bang for our buck, I think of putting together cash flow models for every proposal, similar to what we did with the ad hoc committee. In my mind, I think that's fairly straightforward. The two areas that are intensive are, I think the process is straightforward, compiling data and accurate data of where we would get returns, and the time it takes. That's the challenge. And I don't know that can be done, by New Year's Eve, to be honest with you. I think we could do that undertaking, certainly going into January, and do that relatively quickly when we get into the new year with a focused effort. But I mean, I don't know that we can do that in the next 2 weeks. Now, if you're looking at this specifically, I mean, funding mechanism aside, I mean, this is a pretty clear need. And we've got options. We wouldn't need to do that until what, 16 months later, you said, Chief? So
yeah, we're looking at 14 to 16 months from the time we
Yeah.
sign a contract, we'd be taking delivery.
yeah, so I mean, I think that's a separate question. Regardless of how we're financing it, do we want to lock in the numbers that we have and start the process of procuring those? I mean, I think that's a separate question, but nonetheless, that's a lot of rambling. Sorry, Liz. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I mean, it sounds to me like we have two questions. One is from the chief, we need to lock this in before the 1st of January. What do you need? What would you need? I mean, we need to lock it in if this is how we want to move forward without increasing the price dramatically. What would you need? What would make you feel comfortable to move forward with the process of purchasing these vehicles? A resolution from the full body of council?
No, I don't even need that, ma'am. It's more of a, I don't want to waste the time of our salespeople. And so we have been working with multiple vendors. We are within a week to 2 weeks of having firm dollar figures and a contract on our table.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm just looking for is I know we're going to need a special council meeting to make this happen. I'm not going to have the time. It's not going to be ready for, the next council meeting.
Right.
And I just want, doing my due diligence to make sure that everybody's educated. So when I bring this resolution to council to move forward on the purchase of these vehicles, that we're all on the same page with the need and, what the options are from a financing standpoint.
But to be clear, you'll be looking for us to authorize these purchases before the end of the year.
Yeah, and that is, again, to save us from a 6 to 12% cost increase on January 1.
Right. Got it. I mean, so then what I'm hearing from you, Adam, is that you're willing, obviously, with help and input from other members of council and the administration, to undertake the analysis of whether or not financing a portion of the fire truck purchase is a wiser utilization of our funding than whether or not funding a portion of the fire truck purchase with American Rescue Plan Act funds is a wiser utilization of that funding than other things that we might be able to reap benefits from in the future. I think that might be a slightly more complex question given the number of options we have floating in the air than the kind of cut and dried process that you're contemplating. But we can certainly begin to analyze that conceptually. But what I'm hearing from the chief is that Chief, how much effort do you have to put into the financing plan that will go to waste if we decide to fund a portion of it with ARPA funds?
None at all. No, there's really no additional effort. And I think that was to my point earlier. I don't want to see, Mr. Yoder or anybody have to really cram to do work here when I don't know that really matters right now. I think that's something that could be we could wait a little while down the road for.
Yeah. Well,
so as long as we can act on that sometime in the next 16 months, that is to say in the timeline where we're looking at allocating that ARPA funding anyway, one of the items we have on the table is whether $1 million of ARPA toward fire trucks is the wisest use for that funding. Correct?
Yeah, correct.
And we're not wasting anybody's time waiting till then to decide on it.
Mm-hmm.
So Adam and Bonnie, is what I'm hearing, that we think that the fire department should move on replacing these vehicles.
So
we're talking about two separate questions, right? The fire department is making an appeal for $1 million in ARPA funding. Correct. We've already established that we will need to decide that on a longer term basis than right now.
Correct. So in my mind, these trucks need to be replaced. I mean, whether it's this year, next year, 3 years, I mean, they need to be replaced. I mean, look at the matrix, all the information you gave. And if we don't do it now, it's only going to get more expensive. So I think we need to authorize them to start that process. And I think we have time to finalize the funding mechanism, whether it's leased, whether it's bond, whether it's ARPA, whether it's a combination. I'm comfortable with that response for that question. For the second question, I am happy to put forth an effort with this, but also with a number of other thoughts in my head of where I would. I've talked to a handful of people about where I think we should invest more money versus others. I think that is a clear way that I've been thinking through, is to articulate why that's a better investment. I'm happy to, I guess, run point on that for the betterment for the broader group of council, if they're comfortable with that as well. To answer that question, Liz, that ain't going to happen in the next 2 weeks,
No.
but I'm happy to start that over the next couple of weeks and push through that as we go into the new year. Not just for this, but for some other items that we have discussed openly.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think, and that may not be a discussion that needs to happen in a full-fledged 7 members of council and all the administration ARPA funding meeting, but I would agree with you that we need to start to evaluate those options in terms of the longest and largest benefit that we can
Yep.
get from the funds. I would mention that we also need to consider the difference between $250,000 annual allocation for lease payments for fire trucks and 170, and the extent to which that handicaps future administrations and councils from accomplishing things within our budget, right?
Yep.
I mean, I understand that's always part of the analysis, but thinking about that as a 15-year out obligation is one of those things.
Yep. Understood.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah, but I guess that is to say, right, that we know that will be an obligation if we don't somehow fund this, and we don't know what financial obligations might be entailed by other options we do or don't take. So, so that said, Bonnie, I would assume that you also feel that.
I know I've stayed quiet. Number one, I do want to thank the chief. Chief, this has been a fantastic presentation. I would like to know if you could please send it to us. I think I would like to be able to sit and really regurgitate all the numbers that you've had up there. I agree with what both of you have said over, what we have to do, that it's vitally important to try and get the equipment. We do have time. I think all the chief is looking for today is for us to even give him the okay on going after the purchases before the first of the year. And since we'll have 14 to 16 months to figure out where we're going to go with ARPA funds, I think, it's a better idea as far as how we're going to look for ways of making money off of this money also. So therefore, I think we've answered your question, Chief, as far as where you need to go. I think I would pass this on to, full body of council with saying a positive recommendation for this to save us 6 to 12% on new equipment. I mean, that's a lot of money you're talking about. And so to me, both things we have to go after. I think that's what the bottom line is. Both of them are major objectives for us at this point.
Yep, that answers my question. I greatly appreciate your guys' time. My one question I do have is, should I take this to council on Thursday night looking with the same discussion, or are we happy keeping this in finance committee and then the full discussion at council be when, I'm coming with a proposal to make a purchase?
Pardon me, Adam, do you?
I would say, whatever you need to, I'm assuming you need a resolution, correct?
No, I will. What I was looking for today, you three just told me, and that you're okay with me moving forward on that. So there's really no other need that I would have. My next step will be getting the bids, getting the quotes in, getting the information in, putting the package together, and then providing council with a resolution to actually sign the contract.
So Okay, so
We have Thursday night's meeting and then one more meeting after that if I'm looking at the calendar right.
yeah, and more, Chief, you were saying you don't have enough time. 2 weeks isn't enough time to prepare
Right.
that. So
And my understanding is the council meeting is actually next week, correct?
We have one this Thursday and next
This
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah,
so-
End of the year.
So Chief, as one of 7 and one of 3 on the finance committee, I would be comfortable with you going through the process, compiling everything and generating a resolution, and sending it to council. I'm assuming we're going to need a special meeting at this point.
Mhm.
I'm comfortable with that, but I'm only one of 3 and one of 7.
Well, I think, Chief, that actually that might be a question best posed to President Allison.
Okay.
To my way of thinking,
Certainly.
it would be unwise for us to go over the full financial presentation 2 more times in
Mhm.
front of the full body of council.
Yeah.
That is to say, if you were going to make it, and if it must be made, which it seems to me that it somewhat does during that special meeting, then I would hate to see us do that this coming Thursday, like this week or next week as well.
Yep.
On the other hand, it might not hurt to somehow try and get the concept at the bare minimum in front of all the members of council between now and that special meeting.
Yeah, and I'd be completely happy forwarding this presentation out to all of council. And
Okay.
you know, like I mentioned last night, I wanted to wait for this one because it had more details in it. I could send that out to all of council, you know, with just a synopsis of what our intentions are, and then just field questions if needed. You know, I could speak with Mr. Allison directly.
Yep.
I just, again, whatever makes the process.
I think that's probably the wisest option.
Okay.
The other thing that you might do, Chief Killian, is just attempt to kind of sidebar with some of the
Yes.
other members of council during I know you'll be at tomorrow's budget
Yep.
meeting, budget session. So I think that might be a wiser way to go about it. And then we can have the
Absolutely.
full discussion in the public meeting when we actually are looking at the item itself.
Absolutely.
But like I said, it's possible President Allison feels differently, and he can often be wise in these matters. So you might want to check with him. Okay. But anyway, I think we appreciate how diligently you've worked to make this plan, especially with very little indication of approval or disapproval from anyone. So thank you, Chief Killian, for the time you put into this, and for trying to create a plan, not just for this year, but for the upcoming several years for the fire department. I feel as though the city is often guilty of thinking almost in electoral cycles, and this sort of long-term planning is something that we need to be doing everywhere. But it's really good to see that it's happening in the fire department, where there are so many items that are of such great cost to the city. So thank you for that. Let me also put it out that Randy asked that you send the packet out to all of council, and then they can reach out to you if they have questions.
Absolutely.
And ideally, you'd reach out to some of them on a personal level. Okay.
All right. Well, again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I know I took a fair amount of time here, but I just think this is important information for us to all be on the same page regarding, this type of investment. So appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. All right. And
Hey, Liz,
yes.
I'm up against my 2:30